So in this podcast, I want to discuss how to get a job in testing. But the thing is, when we discuss how to get a job in testing, the real answer is we don't know, right? No one actually knows how to get a job in testing, because what we're describing is how we might be recruiting, what it takes to get a job in the organization we currently work in, what it takes to get a job based on the experiences we have for the roles that we go for. If we primarily go for automated execution roles where we're doing a lot of coding, then we'll say you need to be able to code. If we primarily go for roles which are working with users in banking, then you probably need a different set of skills and it'll be more communication oriented. We really don't know what it takes to get that generic ideal job, because getting a job is completely and utterly dependent on the employer. Now, you do your best to offer the skill sets that they're looking for and keep your skills up to date and present it well, but the choice is down to the employer, not to you. So you have to get lucky. So we're going to describe some ways of trying to maximize the luck involved in the process in this podcast. And that's what I mean by how to get a job in testing. So I've seen people with no experience and no knowledge hired for roles that we would normally associate with people who have experience, because the employer is prepared to train them, because the team that they're going into can support them in their work, right? It really depends. I've seen massively experienced people who could do the role in their sleep passed over for roles. Right? I've seen people who are good enough not get the job, and you don't know whether that's because there was another 25 people going for the job that were equally good and they had to make some sort of arbitrary decision. No one really knows. So I can tell you what I look for when I'm involved in recruiting for testers. But before that, I wrote a LinkedIn post this week on should testers learn how to code. I'll include the link in the show notes. And the basic summary of the post is that people have a choice. Right? Coding has massively helped me in my career, but I don't think people should be forced into learning to code. It's a choice. It's a choice that might open up more roles for you, but it may not open up more roles for you if you don't have the experience to back up, right? But the point is, it's a choice and you shouldn't feel forced. You should make that choice if you think it is appropriate to get the kind of roles you want, if you believe that not being able to code is stopping you, but it's a choice. Fundamentally, that's what I was talking about. And because it is possible to test things without being able to code, testing as a general activity does not require learning to code. If you don't know how to code, then there are limits to what you can use as inputs to your testing. If you don't know how to code, you can't read the code to use the code as inputs. Some people would argue that's a good thing. And if you don't know how to code, you won't automate using code. But there are things that you can't do if you don't know how to code. But that doesn't mean that you can't test. I don't really do accessibility testing because that requires specialist knowledge that I haven't picked up. But if I need to do something around accessibility, then I'll use tools to help me. But that means I don't know how to do accessibility testing, not I don't know how to test. Testing does not require the ability to understand accessibility. Accessibility testing requires the ability to understand accessibility. Testing does not require the ability to code. But if I want to automate in code, then I need the ability to be able to code. But like accessibility testing, there are tools that I can use to automate even if I don't know how to code. But my basic point was that testing and coding are separate knowledge bases. They have an overlap. Now, many of the comments on that LinkedIn post were testers must be able to code. Right, now, some people might have meant that you can't test without being able to code. But I think most people were saying that if you want to get a job in testing, then you need to be able to code. So they're really commenting on their work experience, and they're saying that they don't recruit people who don't know how to code, and that's contextual. It depends on the employer. But I just want to point out that there is a difference between testing and getting a job in testing. These are different concepts. getting a job in some environments requires more skills and experience than we would consider pure testing skills. And if we choose not to learn to code, there are paths that our career can take. We could specialize in UAT, accessibility testing. A lot of security testers don't know how to code. They may eventually learn because it's helpful, but they may not start knowing how to do that. Certainly, I've done security testing. I've found a lot of security defects. Every security defect I have found has been nothing to do with my knowledge of code. I haven't used my knowledge of code to find those security defects, and I've been paid bug bounties in security defect programs that are public. I didn't need code to find security problems. When I started doing performance testing, I used tools that didn't need any coding. We had people on the team who could not code that were doing performance testing. We do not need to code to be able to test. But that lack of being able to code may limit the choice of roles that we have, may limit the choice of employers that we have. But getting a job is different from being able to test. If we need to automate, then we could work with programmers to automate. We could automate using tools rather than code. We don't need to code to be able to test. But getting a job in testing is different from testing. So on this podcast, we're going to discuss getting a job in testing. So to get a job, you have to apply for the job at the right place, at the right time, with the right CV, right? Or with the correct material or methods. Getting a job depends on the agent that's recruiting for the job, right? They may put some people forward and some not. They may not believe the things on your CV, so don't put you forward. They may put you forward because they've got no one else to put forward regardless of whether you have the skills or not. Depends on the filtering process. Depends on the hiring manager. Depends on whether they can read a CV, interpret it, understand it, whether they follow the links to read your LinkedIn profile or blog, or whether they just read the CV. Depends on the job spec they've written. Depends on the filters that they have put in place to reduce the number of CVs that they have to read. Right, 1 week they may get 100 CVs and don't review them very well. 1 week they may get one. It might be yours. You might get lucky. It depends on the interview process. Right, some people interview with tests that are unrelated to the job. Some people put barriers in place that mean people drop out of the process and don't go for the interview. Right, there's a whole bunch of complicated things in there that are mostly unrelated to testing. Right, I just want to point all of that out because you might hear people say that you have to learn to code to get a job in testing, but that isn't necessarily true. There are absolutely companies out there that will only hire people who know how to code to do testing. And there are companies out there that demand coding skills from testers, but then the testers never get to use those coding skills on the job because they're too busy testing. There are companies who put mandatory skills on the job spec, but actually think of them as optional, but they're trying to filter the pool of CVs because they get so many people applying for the jobs. Hiring is fundamentally broken for a whole bunch of reasons, and we have to struggle through that when we're looking for a job. So the point of this podcast, how to get a job in testing, I guess what we're discussing is how to increase the chances of getting a job in testing. So I'm going to tell you what I look for and why I look for those things. When I'm recruiting, I look for people with experience of having tested things and who are interested in testing. Right? Even if I was looking for someone super junior that I was going to train from scratch, I would still want them to have some experience of testing things because I want them to be interested in testing and have some sort of, I guess, passion for testing. So to increase the chances of getting a job, test things. You can test anything. You can test the sites that you visit when you're reading the news. You can get open source software. There's a whole bunch of ways of testing. As well as testing things to build up your experience, in the interview, you have to be able to say what you tested and why. You have to be able to say how you tested and what you found, what you learned when you tested, and how you would test differently next time, how you would take that learning and use it. Now, we can't always fit that information on the CV. So I tend to be biased towards recruiting people who have written that up somewhere on a blog, as LinkedIn posts, as LinkedIn articles, as comments on other people's social media. When I'm recruiting, I look at the CV, I look at the social media links that the person has given me, I follow them up, and I do the review to get a better picture of that person. Many people don't do that. Many people just stick to the CV. So your CV is the thing that's going to sell, or your CV combined with the cover letter. It depends on the employer. So I'm biased towards people who communicate these things publicly because I can teach people to test, but I cannot necessarily teach people to be interested in testing or who are actively trying to improve themselves as testers, right? I can't teach that. So I want that as the basis to work with, that passion for testing. I'm looking for people who are interested in testing, not people who want to use testing as a stepping stone to get into development or programming or project management or IT, or anyone that thinks testing is the easy way in. I'm looking for people who are actively interested in testing. Now, what we find is even if we are experienced in testing, we can't reveal publicly the work we do for companies. So that means we either have to write in generic terms, or you find bugs on live sites and put them on blog posts or LinkedIn posts or whatever else. And if you do that, also explain how you would have tested for that, what this tells you about potentially the testing process that was involved. Or you can test open source software to practice software, or take part in crowdsourced testing programs, right? There's plenty of ways of explaining how you test and demonstrating that you can test. So I'm biased towards people who do that, people who test and who communicate that they test and are learning about testing. So if you haven't got a blog, or you don't use LinkedIn as posts to explain what you're learning, or you don't write LinkedIn articles, that might be a good thing to do. Also make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date, that has a picture of you with a good description that explains what you've done, what you've learned, what other things you've been looking into. Make your profile a sales pitch so that people want to employ you. Anything that gives you an edge is important. Because when we're getting a job, it's not just our testing, it's our ability to sell what we can do. That's massively important. So then there's all the contextual parts. And this is what I mean by you have to be in the right place at the right time. Because hypothetically, if I was hiring for 2 people and the team they're going into wants to do more automating, and they also need to be great at communication, great at exploratory testing, they need to be able to communicate with the users and bridge the gap with the product owner, a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm putting together a job spec, I put all of that in. But I know that hiring that person will be hard. That's a lot of stuff to have one person do. So I might, as I go through the interview process, find someone who's a pretty good match, right? They can code really well, they'll fit in with the team, they can communicate well, but not completely. They can't do everything. But if they could work with someone else, then we'd have the skill set required. So the second person that I hire may not need to be able to automate because they can work with this other person who can. They may not need to be able to do some of the communication work because they can work with this other person. So luck is a factor of this, because had that CV for the second person come in initially, I would have rejected it because I needed everything. Having hired one person, but still with the same job spec and the same role description, I might hire someone that doesn't have all the same match. Luck is a factor, timing is a factor, and we cannot control that. We just have to keep putting in applications and hope that we come in at the right time. Hope that it's the best application. Put our CVs as good as possible so that they don't turn anything away. But there are some roles where I won't compromise. I know exactly what the team needs. There's only one position available. We don't have time to train them. I don't have time to look after what they're doing. I don't have time to review it. So I'm only going to look for someone who can test and automate and do exploratory testing and use this tool and understand this technology. And I know that I'm limiting the pool of people that I can recruit, but I have to for this role because it's contextual. So there's no magic set of skills and experience that guarantees you will get a job. There's no guarantee that if you develop lots of skills, you will get a job, because you might not be experienced in any one of them. I mean, it's hard. It's luck. It's contextual. We have to take the effort to maximize our chances, but we still might not get it. And if you're interested in coding and you're interested in automating, you might actually find it's easier to get a job as a programmer than a tester, because there's usually a narrower set of mandatory skills being used to filter the role. Can you work with this technology? Do you know this language? Do you know this library? Do you know this framework? And you can more easily demonstrate your capabilities on GitHub. Now, it's a lot harder on testing to do this. We have to talk in generalities, write blog posts, programming, GitHub, code. So it depends what you're interested in. Just because you know how to automate doesn't mean you're going to get a job in testing for some companies, because they're looking for people who can test. And that's what makes this hard. So I'm getting to the end now. I'm going to summarize a bit. You get hired when you have the skills that the employer needs, and you're able to sell those skills to that employer, and you get in at the right time. So the only universal thing we can really say about getting a job is keep developing your skills. If there's skills that you do not develop, then it's going to rule out certain things. And you have to understand that. It's a choice, but that's fine. You can develop another set of skills. Develop the skills based on your interests and based on the type of job specs that you want to do. Look at the places you want to work. Look at the job specs. See what skill sets they're looking after. But remember, you have to have in some way the ability to demonstrate experience in that, unless they say, like, we're happy to train you. We want someone who's really junior. It depends on the spec. But what you're also trying to do is communicate your skills and experience in whatever you send through. So your CV, your LinkedIn profile, your cover letter, whatever you're passing in, supporting material in blog posts and articles on LinkedIn, commentary on your blog, and you could create GitHub repos that have bugs, whatever. There's loads of ways that you can try and communicate it. But again, doesn't mean that the employer is going to look at that, because this is hard and luck and persistence is involved. So apply to jobs which you're a good match for. If your CV doesn't match the spec, then amend it so that it does. Tailor, if you're really actively looking for work, tailor your CVs for the job. Apply to jobs which you're a close match for or believe that you can do. But then you have to bridge the gap. So write a cover letter that helps you bridge the gap between the CV, skills and experience, and what they're looking for. There's a sales pitch that you're trying to communicate your value so that they want to buy it. Keep applying for jobs, because you have to apply at the right time. You might get lucky. Your CV might come in when there's fewer people applying. You might get swamped in a big set of people and get unlucky. So that means keep applying for jobs at the same company if you want to apply at that company, because even if you get knocked back, a lot of companies are so big that the next time you apply, it's going through a different route, it's going to a different hiring manager, it's going through a different filter. So ultimately, the way to get a job in testing is to build your skills, because that will limit what you can apply for, possibly, because you might get lucky. Develop your experience, and because people recruit based on experience. Demonstrate your experience on the CV, blog posts, everything else. But fundamentally, just keep applying for jobs, because it's that persistence that ultimately is going to pay off. And if you're interested in it, you're going to keep applying naturally. So it's luck. It is luck. It is persistence. It is hard. Right? There are no absolutes. So just try not to put barriers in place. Anything that you can do to give you an edge and communicate your skill set and value better is what will help you get a job. So hopefully that helps. I put these podcasts out because I'm trying to answer questions that I get. I'm trying to put out information that's based on my experience. I'm just trying to share as much as I can. So if you like this podcast, subscribe wherever you found it. Have a look at my website, EvilTester.com. You can subscribe to the blog post, follow me on social media. And I have a Patreon program where I put out daily posts to just try and share experience as much as possible. So have a look at that, eviltester.com/Patreon. But eviltester.com is where everything is. So hopefully I'll see you there on one of the channels. But thanks very much for listening.